Do you want to take your characters to the next level? I'll show you in this video how to create custom hair with Xgen in Maya and get it running inside Unreal Engine, fast and clean. So the first thing that you should do is create a Maya project. And this is actually pretty important because Xgen relies on the files that live within the project. And if you don't have any project set or any project that is actually pointing to the right, to the right files, Xgen is not gonna work. So it's very important that you make sure that you have the initial project. So the next step is loading already your head mesh. Here I just importing an OBJ from the ZRush file that I was creating. And by the way, if you want to know more about the process behind how I created this character and the full animation, just check this other video. All right, so what I'm doing right now, I'm going to load my sculpts. So which are the sculpts? Sculpts are meshes that are designated to be able to hold all the Xgen collections in this case. So I already have a whole bunch of sculpts that I already created in advance. And the only thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to place these sculpts on my character. For this character specifically, I'm going to be just using the head sculpt, that is for the hair, and also the eyebrow sculpt. So what I'm doing right now, I just getting the scalp into the right shape and initial position. Mostly the most important thing here for me is getting the right proportions. Also, I want you to notice that the scalp has enough polygons, so it will be able to hold every type of deformation correctly. By the way, this character has like a very strong sideburns, and that's the reason why I'm kind of pulling the sideburns even lower. I have at least more space on where the character is going to be placing all the density of this hair, all right? And once you're happy with that, we just need to activate the live mode. And what is live mode? You need to select the mesh where you want everything to snap on. You select live, and then automatically, just by selecting all vertices and just moving the gizmo, it automatically snaps everything around the mesh. So in this case, I use the head as the mesh that I want everything to be wrapped against. And now every time I move things around, it's going to be easier to kind of fix things around. There will be some problems that you need to fix here and there, but with the sculpting tools and having the live mode already enabled, you will be able to fix pretty much every single problem that it come along. So just take your time and have it correctly. So now I'm going to repeat the same operation for the eyebrows. I'm just going to locate it approximately where I feel like it should be correct. And once I'm happy, just with the live mode activated, automatically everything is going to wrap against. Same thing as with the hair. Even after doing the whole wrappings, there will be some areas that is not going to look perfect. So just using the sculpting tools like move brush and the smooth brush, just move things around to make sure that you cover enough for the hair. All right, so it's time to create our first hair description. So I selected the sculpt, and I'm just going to name it the description and the collection, in this case hair. I loaded, as you can tell, just a placeholder from the sculpt that I did in ZBrush to kind of understand how the hairlines, or at least the guidelines, should be working, and mostly to understand the flow. This part of the process is actually quite simple if you think about it. The only thing that you have to do is try to make sure that all the guidelines kind of follow along. And if you also click on the brush settings while you are combing the guidelines, if you deactivate lock length, you will be able to stretch the guidelines while sculpting the shape. So it's actually very useful to create at least the initial guidelines where still you need to create the major flow of the hairstyle. So something that I also tend to do as well, I always try to normalize the guidelines. And this is very important because every time you are stretching the guide, the vertex distance is going to start getting more uneven and more unnatural. So you need to make sure that in some cases you start adding more length. Every time you are adding more length, you are adding more vertices, and also you are normalizing that distance. So it's actually very important and relevant that you cannot take this in consideration. Also, as you can see, I'm using a lot of shortcuts. So I have Shift A for my shortcut to activate the guide combing tool. And I will recommend you to also in Maya having that set up. So it's very easy to constantly jump in and out for the combing in action. And the next tip that I will give you is try to make sure that initially you create the guidelines just on the outline of the hair. This way you can already establish which is the initial area that is going to be covered while creating all this hairstyle. So once you created enough guidelines, it's time to create the map where the hair is going to be growing from. So in the description mask, just make sure that you have enough map resolution and also set the initial color to black. This is very important because since it's black, no hair is going to be growing. And now just with the brush in white color, you're going to be drawing exactly what is the area where the hair is going to be growing from. This way is actually the fastest way that you can create the initial density map. So as you can see right now, what I'm doing, I just roughly making a small mask of where it's going to be growing. And also with if you press shift on your brush, you're going to be able to smooth also the painting. So in some areas, like for example, the hairline, you want everything to be smoothed. So you don't have like this harsh, transition between hair and no hair. And once you're absolutely happy, just save and automatically it's going to get refreshed. As you can see, the hair looks pretty bad at this stage. And there's a couple of settings that we need to change, starting from the density and mostly also the amount of CVs every hairline has. Once you are happy, we're going to enter into our modifier panel and we're going to start with our initial clamp modifier. This clamp is going to be generated just for the guides. So the whole function of this clamp is to be sure that all the hair is going to follow the guides that we just created. And this is very important because in any hairstyle that you're going to be creating from now on, the first modifier that you're going to be always playing with is a clamp modifier, and always make sure that it follows the guides. In some cases, you're going to notice, like in this case, that the hair is still not following the hairline correctly. And the reason why is because the interpolation between the guidelines is not good enough, which means that you need to create, in some cases, more guides to be sure that it works correctly. And this way you can help the process to be able to clamp correctly. Also, as you can see right now, I'm also creating a quick mask just for the clamping, because if you think about it, the area that is going to be clamped is just going to be the top area that is kind of the most stylized area. Everything on the sides doesn't need to be clamped. So what I did right now, I just did a quick mask to make sure that this initial clamping only happened on the top area. So at this stage, I start getting more happy with the amount of guidelines, and it feels like just with one clamp, I was kind of getting array in the hairstyle. So for me, it's time to start moving into the next stage that is already applying some Xgen description. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to show you the first Xgen description that I love to use. That is the with Xgen description. So I will ask you to probably stop the video and paste the description that I just wrote here. And I'm going to explain you how it works. The way it works is that it's going to utilize already your hair density mask that you created initially. And since you remember, we already created a blur mask on the hairline. So this intensity is going to be different if the hair is on the hairline, considering that it's on the middle. So it's going to dictate how width is going to be the hair in certain areas. So this is extremely useful, especially if you try to create more realistic characters. In this case, it's a sometimes stylized hyper realistic character. So I wanted the hair also to kind of to play along with that. The second stage that you need to do is a second modifier. The second modifier is to break even more the clamps. So stop the video and get this second description in place. What is going to happen right now is that for every clamp that you created, it's going to break it in subclamps. So this way you can even have more breaking and more realism in some areas. As also with the first clamping, what I did, I start masking which areas I wanted to be more, have more clamping breaks. So I really recommend you to kind of play with that to have more breaking in some areas. Like for example, on the back, you don't need that type of breaking. So you just start removing some of this clamping on certain areas according to your preferences. Great thing about this process is that it's actually pretty simple and it's kind of repetitive because if you think pretty much every hairstyle always starts the same. So if you create every single hairstyle the way that I'm just teaching you right now with initial guidelines, the first clamp to follow the guides and the second clamp just to have a breakup, you're going to have just by default already somewhat a good looking hairstyle. But this is not going to be good enough. So the second description that I will ask you to put is on the cut modifier. In this case, you can have two options. You can implement it already as a new modifier, or you can implement it even inside the clamp. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, that inside clamps in Xgen, you have all bunch of different parameters that you can play with, including clamp, which is going to do this clamp expression. Is going to make sure that every single new breakup is going to have different length. So not all the clamps are going to end up exactly in the same spot, which is extremely crucial if you want to achieve more realism in your hairstyle. All right, so let's create a light. And you might be asking why you need to create a light. The reason why is that in some cases you need to see the negative spaces, which is pretty much all the volumes or at least the negative values that I'm creating within clamps. Just by utilizing a light and enabling lighting in the Maya viewport, you will be able to display everything better and you will be able to judge also better how actually your hair is flowing and how all these negative spaces are working. And one very important setting is inside the light properties, make sure that you bump your resolution to max as possible. And this is crucial to make sure that the shadows are soft and you don't have like this weird crispy vibe. So this way you have a better representation of how actually the hair looks. All right, so it's time to implement a cut modifier. What we're going to do right now, we're going to utilize exactly the same expression that we used before. And this is going to create different lengths for every single hair, which is going to make small breaks, which is crucial. Then after that, you create a noise modifier to make sure that the hair strands are not perfect, plain. So you have actually some level of, noise in this case, of course. So it's very important that you play with that. And the last one is applying a noise modifier, but this is for the flyaway. So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to implement a small expression on the mask to make sure that this only happens per percentage. So as you can see right now, if I play with bigger percentage or with lower percentage on this last noise modifier, it's going to be applied to less hairs. So this is now just a matter of keep playing with different properties and trying to be sure that you get the right look that you want. Okay, so now we are going to be jumping on the brows. I believe now at this stage you kind of have a quite idea of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to implement exactly the same procedure. I'm going to create a new collection with a new description as well, and I'm going to name it brows. And now, just with the sculpt correctly, I'm just going to be creating the initial guidelines. These pros of this guy, I didn't have any clear idea where I wanted to go, but I felt like I wanted to be kind of pointing or at least pointy in certain areas. So right now what I'm doing, I just kind of combine them around. I still have the lock length on to be sure that I don't start stretching them for no reason. And once I'm happy with the initial implementation, the initial setup, I can start placing new hairlines around. The cool thing about the XGen, and it happens with a lot of combing programs, is that every time you place a new guideline, it can interpolate the shape and also the position to the ones that is around it. So this way, you don't need to always comb everything or like set up the length for every single length. So this is actually very convenient. So the most important when you are creating all this type of hairstyle is that you focus on the main ones and then you start populating with a whole bunch of different guidelines. So here is where I felt like I needed to start playing along with the character. So as you can see, I unlock the long length and then I start playing with that. Once I was happy with it, I just start creating my first mask just by utilizing the same parameters that we did for the hair, making sure that it's in black, and I just start painting on white, whichever areas I felt like the brow it should be growing from. And once I'm happy with it, I just press shift on my keyboard and start, smoothing things around whenever, I want my brows to be like a less dramatic. Now there is one small trick that you should know. You can mirror also the brow. So as you can see, I'm just combing the left side of the character, but if you select all the guidelines and click mirror on the modifiers, you're going to notice that you will be able to create every single guideline just on the other side. So this is actually very useful because this way for any symmetrical character that you have, you only need to focus in one side. That's something that I personally didn't do that much on the hair because the hair, even if it's symmetrical, it doesn't flow symmetrical. So I felt like it was not needed to do that. Now with the brows, I'm going to be doing exactly the same setup. So for the hair width, I implement the same action description as you can see. So I already have like some cool understanding of how the brows will look like. It felt like it's missing already some clumping. So I'm going to add a clumping modifier. Once I add the clamp modifier, I make sure that it follows the guides in setup maps. And I just start playing with the mask and try to make sure that I clamp just wherever I want. And here is a matter of just start playing with the modifiers that you already know. You can add more clan modifiers, you can start breaking things around, you can start adding noise modifiers, you can even implement new guidelines if you feel like you need your flow to work differently. But this is actually an area where you already have the initial eyebrows already set up, it's just playing with it. Okay, so now we are absolutely happy with the hair. So it's time to export into Unreal Engine. For that, we're going to be using the Xgen to Unreal Engine Python code. You can find the link on the description. The process is actually very straightforward. The only thing that you need to do, you need to select the mesh where you want the hair to be growing from, at least in Unreal. And then from there, you just follow every single step. This script is actually fantastic because it makes the process so easy and so straightforward. You just need to follow every single step one by one. Make sure that you have your UV attributes created, your ID attributes as well, which is very important later on to utilize in Unreal Engine. And once you are absolutely happy and you went through all the parameters, you're going to be exporting the final Alembic file. The process sometimes can take some time, so no worries if it takes like 5-10 minutes. It's quite normal. And just, like speeding up the process so you guys have a clear understanding. But for example, for different areas, like for example the brows, the process was way faster. Again, I just selected the description that I wanted. I selected the head as a growing mesh from. And from there, I just start going one by one, make sure that I have everything already created correctly. And from there, just export and have that Alembic file ready for Unreal Engine. All right, so it's time to jump into Unreal Engine. The first thing that you should make sure is that you have your Alembic import enabled. And once you have that enabled, just make sure that you find the ABC that you already exported from Maya. This is going to ask you which are the parameters that you want to be exporting from. And this is very important. You need to make sure that the transformations that you use are the ones that I'm showing you right now. So stop the video and save those transformations, especially the rotation ones. This way is the only way that it's going to be facing the correct direction in Unreal Engine. Now we're going to be creating the bindings. So select any of the hairstyles that you just imported and create bind. Now it's very important that you select which is the skeletal mesh that you want to bind against. This pretty much what it's going to do is that every time your character is going to be moving around and it's going to be animated, this is going to attach, or let's say is the glue to that skeletal mesh. So this is extremely relevant because if you don't have the bind correctly, you won't be able to implement that in your metahumans. Now, if you open your character blueprint, you're going to see that you're going to have a hair and brows grooming files. So here is where you need to load the asset that you just created. So we're going to load first our Alembic hair, and now we're going to load our hair bind that we just created. Now, every time we're going to be moving this character around, the hair will follow along. Now for the brows, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to load the Alembic file and also the brows bind into the skeletal mesh. Now you just need to compile and save your blueprint. And now if I load this character in the viewport, if I place it in the viewport, you're going to notice that the hair is going to be follow along, but the hair is not moving yet. For that, the only thing that you need to do is to open the Alembic file, in this case the hair, and we're going to be enabling physics. I will recommend you to keep the solving into the groom springs. Something I noticed for this character is that I needed to decrease the gravity because otherwise the hair will be pushed down too much. So what I did, I placed a lower value for the gravity so the hair can stay around. From here is a lot of experimentation, really. It's very difficult to say what are the right parameters because even in some cases, I needed to disable some of those. So what I will suggest you, just go around from the different solvers that you have here on the physics menu and try to figure out which are the right ones and which ones behave better. And the cool thing is that if you have the sequencer next to you, you can just test them just on demand. Lastly, for the shader, what I did, I just copy paste the Metahuman hair shader. And to be fair, there is nothing better than the Metahuman that shader that comes by default. I try a bunch of different hair shaders, even I try to do it by myself, and still you don't have that, all level of customization that you have with the Metahuman hair shader. So inside the parameters of your hair, just make sure that you apply the right shader into it. Also, something that I noticed is that if I turn on and off the scene light, the surface scene light, the hair will behave better. This is not something that always happen, but in some cases you need to be sure that you go through the menus of the hair or the Alembic file and see which are the right parameters that could potentially work. And then on the shader itself, it's pretty straightforward. You will be playing with the melanin values to make sure that the hair becomes whiter or blondish to also brunette. You will be playing with the roughness variation, all bunch of different parameters, but this is going to depend quite a lot on what is your final look, plus a combination of what is your scene light. So in some cases, it's a back and forth of the scene light and also your hair shader, but sooner or later, you're going to get to the sweet spot. Alright, so this is the full process, creating the hair in Xgen and then imported into Unreal Engine. By the way, if you want to see the full process behind this character, where I'm not only showing that, but I'm showing pretty much everything, just check this other video. Otherwise, just scout the channel and I hope to see you in the next one.